Welcome to the Lightning Talks. There are two types of Lightning Talks. I'm Richard Esplin, by the way. There's two types of Lightning Talks. There's Ignite-style Lightning Talks, and there's Classic-style Lightning Talks. All Lightning Talks are 5 minutes. The Ignite-style ones have auto-advancing slides. So when the shady stop sign comes up, that means it's the last slide of the speaker. When it goes bright red, the speaker needs to be done. If it disappears, they're cutting into the next person's time. We have 48 minutes of content in a 50-minute session. We have to be strict, and I have to stop.
Hi, my name is Bramley, and I'm the joint CTO at Ixxus. And today I'm going to be taking a trip through memory lane with Alfresco. I started with Alfresco 0.6, so I've been using it for a long time. So I'm going to take you on a journey. It's 2005, and I'm joining a startup. We've spotted a gap in the market, and we're going to build a Java enterprise content management system, and looking to hit the sort of small, medium businesses. And then Alfresco comes out of stealth mode with a preview release, and it's feature-rich. It's got a head start on us, great VC backing, and a good management team with a Documentum pedigree. So it's formidable competition. So it's 2005, I'm joining a startup, and we're going to build an information management appliance based on Alfresco. And I know Doug was talking about a powered by Alfresco logo, but there used to be one. So what was in kind of the really early version? You know, most people don't get to see Alfresco Explorer anymore, but you know, there was document management on top of a core repository. You had space templates, which are now finally back in share, shortcuts, the shelf, the ability to search and do simple workflow and rules for end users. And in 2006, we actually early on built a lot of extensions. So we added our own recycle bin capability, and we built version labeling. So you could say which versions of a document were important and only retain those ones and purge in between them. And we added IMAP. So this is eventually got released as the Opsmail Manager product, but very early on we had this IMAP capability, so our users could file their emails in the repository. And in 2006, WCM on the AVM came out on 1.4 beta, and it had XForms, so you could define your content model for your website using XSD, and it would render the forms for your users. But also, with the interwoven team, they brought in JBPM, so you had proper workflow for approve and reject, but also the notion of sandboxes, so you could have multiple concurrent edits going on for your web content. And they added virtual Tomcat, so you could preview using a feature called valves, and this used RMI back to the repository and sifts under the covers, and you could hook into any of your sandboxes to preview your site. 2007, kind of the big thing that stuck out for me was the Paris European Community Conference, and it's nice to see people in the room and at the conference that I've met over 6 years ago, and they're still involved and active in Alfresco today. 2008, and really, Halloween, it was a release of Alfresco 3.0 and Share. And Share brought the new collaboration way of working to Alfresco with the introduction of sites and also a more friendly, or developer-friendly, as well as user-friendly interface. And there were lots of kind of important features that sites brought. So the sort of contained wikis, blogs, and calendar, and also activities lists. And in 2010, CMIS got ratified. So the Content Management Interoperability Services Standard has often been described as a sequel for content. But it's not only that. Yes, it gives you a way of querying documents and folders, but also there's kind of the JDBC or ODBC equivalent, which are the different bindings. And now in 1.1, we're seeing JSON browser binding. But CMIS, Alfresco had draft versions early on, and you could preview, and it was great. And the other thing in 2010 was a launch of Activiti. Now, Alfresco launched the Activiti open source project to be able to have a BPMN2, so an open standard workflow definition, But also a little known fact is that Alfresco, the company, was originally called Activiti, so they already had all the domain names and branding. In 2012, the major thing for me was the release of 4.0 with Solar. So at last we had, rather than in-transaction Lucene indexing, we could have eventual consistent indexes offloaded from the server. And that is a big deal in scaling. And in 2012, the Alfresco cloud came out of, went into public beta. And this really started with the shift from on-premise to the simple and smart 20/60/20 hybrid that we see today. And what for the future? Well, in 5.0, or the roadmap, some of the things that are interesting for me are kind of the move to Solar 4 and proper distributedness, but also I think it's taking that fight forwards to box rather than the legacy document and fight.
Yeah, hello everybody. I'm Florian Maul with FME. I'm a senior consultant and mostly doing Alfresco. Exclusively doing Alfresco at the moment. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the JavaScript console. Maybe most of you know that extension. I gave a talk last year in Berlin about that, a bit longer than that, but today I just want to tell you a little bit what's new, what we have done in development, and what you can use almost today. So just for anyone who might not know the JavaScript console, it's an extension for Alfresco Share that allows you to write and execute JavaScript and run it in the repository. It's for developers, and it's the highest rated add-on on add-ons, alfresco.com. And there are lots of happy customers or happy users of it, and I've put some of the testimonials in the lower third. For those of you who have not seen it, it's a Share admin console extension with an input window where you can write your script, and with an output window where you see output logging. So, and what I'm going to tell you about a little bit is what is new. It's the code completion, some snippets that we've included, the GitHub gist integration, which is not quite finished, and some smaller changes as well. So in the older version, we had some sort of code completion. It was not really good. It's just every variable that was called something node was treated as a script node, and it's quite limited. And now we're using something that's really dynamic, and it's using a library called Turn.js, and it's a lot better, and it actually supports types in JavaScript, which is not really in the language. So what you can do now is, if you have some text array and you loop over it with a for loop, you can actually get array of I and get a code completion with all the array commands. Or if you use company home dot, you get all the code completion with the commands that are available in the JavaScript API. Then you can also do this with site servers, for example, and it's not limited to script nodes. In this case, it's a site object, and you see if you assign it to a variable, you can still get it completed, as well as with workflow service. And if you have a workflow instance, and this is an API that's usually quite obscure, and if you don't know how to use it, this makes it really easy to use. And all this is thanks to a colleague of mine who has forked my project and extended it a lot in his spare time, so I want to give a shout out to him. He couldn't be here today, but as Jens Goldhammer, you might follow him on Twitter and check out what he's doing. It's really cool. Yeah, another feature is the snippets. Here we have support for something like the Java interfaces for the properties, types, and aspects, and you can enter it with as type, theme, content, and so on. And another use case for the snippets is we have examples. Like this is the mail example. If you just enter X mail, you get the script example for writing mail actions. And the next thing, gist integration. You might know GitHub gists. This is one script that I've saved, and you can put your scripts into GitHub. And then with the new improvements to the JavaScript console, you can say connect to GitHub. This uses actually the share OAuth library that Will Epson has written. And if you do that, you have to approve it in the GitHub API, connect to it, and then you have the ability to go load, say, from your gists and open scripts directly from gists. And the cool thing about that is if others have shared gist scripts publicly, you can go in and star them, and all the start gists are also available. So this might be a good possibility to share scripts with others in the community. Of course, saving scripts is available as well. Another thing that's in the new JavaScript console is the JS hint integration, so you get information if some variable is never used, or if you have left the braces out, and you get warnings and errors this way. Also, the validation for JSON output, so if you're writing JSON and you have an additional comma which crashes in Internet Explorer, then this will help you find that. And finally, we have some theming support in there, so you can now even have the darker background. So it's a perfect tool for developers, for admins, and also for training, exceptly with the snippets. You can really try out the code, and it's available on GitHub. You can download it. There's a pre-release, release candidate, and it will be available soon.
All right, so comes up here in a second. My name is Jared Ottley. I'm a member of the integrations team at Alfresco, and I'm going to talk a little bit about CORS enabling your Alfresco repository. We'll talk a little about what CORS is, where is it supported, and what are some of the configurations, things that you can do with it, and give a little short video demo of CORS. CORS, as the next slide comes up, is an acronym for Cross-Object Resource Sharing. And it helps us get around the cross-domain issue in browser applications. As many of you know, when you try to make a call with the AJAX call from one domain into another domain, your browser will block that call. And so what CORS is as it was developed started in 2004, is a way of being able to securely approve applications. CORS support is supported by most browsers. It has, as you can see up there, with partial support in 8 and 9. And what that means is that you can't modify headers in IE, but it's full support in 10. How does it work? Well, there's nothing to implement in your JavaScript. You can continue to use your JavaScript as it is. And all the heavy lifting is done by the browser and by the server. And so the browser makes the request out for you, and the server then says what to do. So there's two parts to it. The first part is the browser sees that it's an AJAX call and says, oh, I want to see if the server supports this, and makes a request, an options request out to the server. Once that's approved or says that it's done, then there's an API. Your API request is then is done from Alfresco. And here's a little code example in jQuery of what it would look like. In this case, this was taken from one that was going against Cloud, the public API in Cloud, so we had to set an OAuth header there on that one. But it would work just the same with the login ticket for Alfresco. So we don't ship with CORS, but we do have CORS support, and we do use it on Alfresco Cloud, but it's specific for our Alfresco for Salesforce connector. It's pretty easy. You want to be able to you just go to this website, and you can be able to grab the CORS filter and the Java properties utility jars from there and add them into your webinflib directory. Next, you'll want to be able to go through and modify your web.xml. So you want to be able to set your filter and your filter mapping saying what URLs you want the CORS filter to work against as part of that. Now, you also want to be able to go through with your filter mapping and be able to say, now, what is it that I want to do? Do I want to do the services URLs, so all of your web scripts, or are you also going to do CMIS Atom? And now with 1.1 and CMIS 1.1 and 4.2, you do the CMIS browser bindings to work against JavaScript, the JSON bindings there. So in Alfresco, what happens is that we also have an authentication layer in there. We want our options call to occur without authentication, but we want any of our API requests all to occur with authentication. So there's an authentication layer between that one. So in your web.xml, your filter could be placed anywhere within the file, but within your filter chain, the filter mappings must occur before any authentication filters occur. So in 4.2, this could probably go, can go after the global localization filter, which is, I believe, the first filter, but it has to occur at least before the CMIS security context cleaning filter. So before any authentication filter, that needs to go into there. Now, by default, the CORS configuration is to allow any request to go against there. Remember, CORS is not primarily about securing your server or adding server security. It's to protect the browser from legitimate requests or illegitimate requests. So there's two ways to configure that one. You can do a configuration properties file, and you can load that through a system property on the job when you start Alfresco, or by passing it in an init param, or you can do individual parameters for each of those. And so here's some of the configurations. Important ones are the allow generic HTTP requests and the supports credentials. You should accept the defaults and never change those on Alfresco, because we want to continue Alfresco to work as normal. You also have a timer, how long that request will live. Next, you want to say which domains. Now, you can limit the domains of what it's going to go through, and if it's not allowed, to get a 403. So if you're, for our Salesforce one, which you'll see on the next slide as well, we wanted to know specifically, or wanted to allow just requests from salesforce.com. But the problem with that is that the domain, part of the domain name is dynamic. So Alfresco has committed or added to the CORS configuration the ability to say whether or not subdomains are allowed. Next, you want to specify what type of HTTP verbs you allow. So you want to be able to say which specific ones. Default is normal for all of them, or you can specify specific ones. Also, what headers you want it to allow or look at along with that. You can also expose additional headers. Maybe you have additional things that your application wants to look at and be able to pass those or have those returned back during the options request. And so you can set those as well during the process. So a quick little demo. You can see, well, it's really hard to see it, but this right here is pointing at xmpp.alfresco.com. And that's in our JavaScript. Next, we're going to go to a website that's hosted at emerson.ottleys.net. You didn't get to see that really quick. Went too fast. But what it did was it showed you that a successful request was made against the browser from one domain into another. And those are the resources that you can go to be able to see or know more about CORS in Alfresco.
Hi everybody, my name is Ivan. I am head of Java and ECM practice at CROZ. CROZ is a Alfresco partner from Croatia. I'm here to tell you a little bit about Alfresco and Neo4j integration we did in our R&D department. Basically, when you look at Alfresco and Neo4j, you can see that there are some similarities there, because internal Alfresco node structure is very similar to Neo4j internal node structure. So when this similarity between two products made us believe that there is some natural integration possible here. And what we wanted all the benefits of Neo4j applied on Alfresco data. For example, to be able to create new relationship between Alfresco data, but in a non-invasive manner. So to create it in Neo4j instead of creating it in Alfresco. And it was a bold idea. We decided to take a shot, and first thing we focused on is finding appropriate business case. And we found that business case in insurance industry. We took an insurance company with multiple branches and a business case of storing all the documents that were created after client reports car damage. So all documents are stored in Alfresco, and there is a front-end application that is used for managing documents and metadata. And we believe this is a very nice use case for testing this integration, because insurance officers can visualize and analyze data. This is the architecture. Alfresco is in the middle, storing documents. Front-end application is built using XJS and Grails. We have even developed our own framework that simplifies generation of XJS and Grails applications by providing features such as automatic application generator, integrated JavaScript, IOTS controller, and so on. On Alfresco side, we developed a component that enables us to handle all the requests with Spring native components such as controllers and services instead of classic WebScript approach. This is our custom-made visualization tool. Here, what you're seeing is nodes in Neo4j that were basically moved from Alfresco. Integration module, there is an initial import component that reads data using Node.dao, transfers it to Neo4j connector, which transfers data to Neo4j. In Neo4j, we developed an extension that receives this data and creates nodes in database. Initial import is triggered in Bootstrap, and it's executed in background, so you don't have to worry about your system being unavailable. Once this is done, real-time synchronization component kicks in. It's based on behaviors mechanism, so it picks up all the changes in Alfresco data and syncs that back to Neo4j. So these two bases are basically in synchronization. And visualization module that you saw before is based on D3 JavaScript library. We spent only 2 months in development, but came up with some nice features like force hierarchical and radial layout, as you will see, and several graph analysis algorithms, like you will also see it later. We, of course, stumbled upon some challenges. Initial data import. At the end, we opted for reading data using Node.dao. And real-time data synchronization. Behaviors hit the nail on the head. It was just what we needed to pick up all the changes in Alfresco data and sync that back to Neo4j. There is also a third challenge that we are currently facing and resolving, and it deals with synchronization after one component fails temporarily and then recovers. And we plan to solve that using event bus with persistent queue, or even maybe with event sourcing. We'll take a look now at a little longer demonstration. So I can execute a predefined query, which will give me nodes that I need. We will expand all nodes and change layout to radial layout because it suits us fine. And after we change layout, we'll apply some graph analysis algorithms to see, for example, which branches have the most card images. And the second analysis will show us what document types are most often used, like correspondence. There is also a panel with details, filters, and various options on the right. So as you can see, user interface is packed with features. Beside layouts and graph analysis algorithms, you can also select multiple nodes, expand, collapse. There is no details panel, and very useful predefined queries that can be very useful for something like favorites. We believe this is as useful as it is cool. In this implementation, it can be used as alternative Alfresco node browser. It can be used whenever you need visual data analysis, or when you want to enhance Alfresco data without meddling in Alfresco. You can do that in Neo4j database. If you have any other ideas, feel free to share. There is so much I would like to tell you and so little time, and Richard is going to kill me. So you can read all about it here on this URL. There is even a movie for those who don't like to read very much. So thank you very much.
Okay, let's wait. Hello, I am Andrea Agili from DrWolf, a small company based in Florence, in Italy. We work mainly on highly customized applications based on Alfresco, based on Java. We work on Alfresco since 2006. A common use case is where our customers don't even know that their data is on Alfresco. They use complete new applications. So what I try to do is I try to create applications in a modern way, something that there is a strong push towards JavaScript development in the modern web apps, and I try to see if we can push the browser to the limits to see what we can do. You know how share works, so I don't need to explain to you. We have a browser, we have a share, and we have the Alfresco repository. Share basically is a RESTful stateless client which connects to Alfresco. So also our browser is a RESTful stateless client which could connect to Alfresco. So I try to simplify the architecture and see what could be done. And basically the idea is to use the JSON browser bindings to directly interoperate with the repository. So what I want to do is to have something I could reuse to develop a small portion of application or small functionalities, and to be sexy and sleeky with like all the new interfaces. So it will be easy to develop. You just have to edit your files, you refresh the browser, and you have your changes. You don't have to deploy nothing. It's all fast and easy to deploy, to develop. You don't have nothing to deploy. You just need a good text editor, something like TextMate or Sublime Text. You can even use an IDE, but you don't need it. And a good browser to use, Chrome has exceptional developer tools, also Firefox. Other browsers is not good. So we are not trying to use we are used to build page server side and enhance them. What we are trying to do now is to do everything in the client. I just serve static HTML and use JavaScript to create all the application. What I have used to create is Twitter Bootstrap and jQuery. I think everybody in the web development world knows what this can do. Knockout.js is a data binding library which allows you to just define, to bind the data with the interface in a declarative way. Underscore is a utility belt for JavaScript that says something useful like jQuery, but for the back, not for the UI, let's say. I only used what Alfresco provides out of the box, the seamless browser bindings and Alfresco REST APIs for what the browser bindings can do. For example, you can't do authentication in the browser bindings, which explicitly leaves it to the HTTP authentication. Or you can't force the thumbnail to be generated, but you can do it with the REST API. And the aspects, we'll see. I didn't have time to see the new things. So what there is now, it's a single page web browser which lets you explore the repository, see the properties, see the previews, and have a simple search interface. And this is how it appears. I intentionally left the Bootstrap default theme so it can be easy to customize it. As you know, there are a lot of themes for Bootstrap. It's really easy to work on this. Okay, so we can compare it with Share. Now the full application HTML JavaScript is around 400 kilobytes, and each request, each page is about 10K. So it's 1/10 the size of Share from the client side point of view. This is an example of code. I'll try to explain something. You just define a variable, and you say when the variable changes, just wait a second, half a second, and make a search. You just create your search string. You use the browser bindings, just a jQuery post. You add the statement. You say this is the browser binding API, and you update another variable, the results. And this is all the markup you need. You bind the input type with the variable I defined before, and you iterate on the results. The knockout library do the rest. You don't have to say when this change, update this part. I left the effective markup for displaying things. It's just an image tag or a title. It's not something interesting. But you have an automatic way of just declaring variable and the results. So what I have in mind to do, create a set, a subset of this part. For example, only the CMS.js connector. or, for example, only the search box, only the flower browser. So it can be easy to just embed this part on your application or your part of a website, for example. Now, with CROZ, it could be even easier to implement these kind of things. And so now in the next slide, you'll see the reference to the project. It's on GitHub. You can download it, try it. It's easy and fast. And thank you.
In? Yeah.
So,
Okay, I try to do it in 5 minutes. My name is Santiago Navarro. I am the CEO of keensoft. I try to explain how to synchronize activity tasks with an external system. Well, I use our customer case, National Library of Spain. This client, this customer needs to integrate Alfresco with the intranet to their users. So this is a screenshot of the integration. You see the Alfresco inside the header and the footer of the intranet. This intranet, well, you access to the Alfresco through this tab. This intranet has a task panel to manage the user tasks, and we inject the Alfresco tasks in this task manager. So the users can access to these tasks through the Alfresco share or through the intranet. Both systems are communicated using Activiti. So, some concepts about Activiti. Activiti has two kinds of tasks, simple tasks and multiple tasks. Multiple tasks are composed by simple tasks, so it's similar, the composition of the tasks. Activiti provides listeners to capture that events. Two different listeners, task listener for simple tasks and execution listeners for multiple tasks. In simple tasks, we capture the events of created, completed, and assigned, and send a message to the external system. Sorry, the external system was built based in OpenCMS. It's just for your information. The first event assigned is fired at the same time of created event. So we ignore it and only manage the reassignment of a task. Multiple tasks are composed by simple tasks, so the previous integration works fine. It's nothing to do, nothing more. But it's necessary to capture the end event of the multiple tasks. Why? Multiple tasks with conditional completion condition could end if without send the end message to the completed message, to all simple tasks. So we need to capture the end event and ensure we send all in message to the external system. It's necessary to don't have zombie tags, you know. The cancel event in the multiple tasks works like the end event, so it's not necessary to do nothing more. And if the task has content associated and the content is deleted, the task is still living in both systems, so it's not necessary to do no more. Well, let's see some codes. Sorry in advance because we see a lot of code and it's difficult to follow. We develop a parser to the definition of the workflows. We need to change the definition of the workflows when it is created, and listeners to capture the events in the execution of the workflows and send the message to the external system. Well, the first of all is to define in Esplin the beans we use. We develop it to the version 4.2.c using per listeners, but in the next version 4.2.d that changed, and we have to change for post-handler events. It's for your information, the source code you can access is prepared for the 4.2.d. Okay, in this code we insert or handlet in the list of Alfresco handlers, right? Then the handler, the parser handler, modify the workflow in its creation and inserts the listeners of the different events to capture it. In the multiple task, that is an iteration for all the simple task that compone now? Yeah? Oh, of course. Sorry.
I'll give you 20 seconds.
20 seconds? Okay, I do that. And this is the listeners. We send the message to the external system. And this is the reassignment. This is the end. And the important, the code is prepared for, it's a dummy. You need to do that things when you create a real external system, and this is the lessons we learned. Sorry, I don't have time for more. Thank you.
Sí. Hi everybody, I am Fernando González. I work in Ricoh company, Spain. Excuse me for my English. Yeah. Why developing a module that detects viruses and malware in Alfresco, particularly in document and record management? The asset is very simple. Viruses and malware are inside in documents, in more files, in PowerPoint, Word, and write documents. But what is Alfresco Virus Alert or Alfviral? Is a module installable in Alfresco that uses an antivirus software to scan both new upload document and those already present in the repository. Well, this module currently works in 3 different ways. Executing virus scan program from the command line with defined parameters, sending a document data flow to an antivirus port, for example, and clamp up an antivirus in a stream to a port, and using JSON HTTP protocol to send files to www.totalantivirus.com. And this module supports three detection modes, with use of policies or events to scan, download, or read content, use of a schedule to scan spaces programmatically, and use of action scan in users interfaces in Alfresco Explorer and Share. And file exception with extension for MIME types, assignment and assignment of custom aspect to classify infection of virus. The architecture in three modes, command, in stream, and virus total, is a classical Java class, classical action in Java class. This Java class inherits from action executor abstract base, and it's called in other Java class. For script and web scripts, the logic is calling to Java class Alfresco virus scan. We can threefold two layers. One layer is Java class, and the another layer is for JavaScript and scripts. Well, in this picture, we can see the two layers. One layer is in share and in the repository, and HTTP JSON communication established from scan file action in JavaScript to scan file WebScript. Finally, it's called to video scan Java. It's the action. Well, the Alfviral, the configuration of Alfviral SV can be easy. Use alfviral.properties file configuration and set up modes, events, schedules, exception, this file. But the use of custom data model is a great option to classify the infections. In Alfviral, contains one aspect, one general aspect, and one aspect per class of detection, which information, this information includes date of detection, code of response, and etc. Yes, there is more ways to scan with automation from upload and create and documents and action and roles, which is scanning, planification for schedule action, context XML, and interactive scanning, action run, and action UI action. The to-do is more list of type inclusion, only exclusion currently. That's for monitorization, reports of activity, infection, users, and refactoring, more refactoring, and advanced to-do, connector and interfaces for scanning, for other engines, antivirus, Symantec, Trade McAfee. That's all. Thank you. Okay.
Hello, everybody. This is a day in the Alfresco administrator. I'm Antonio Support. Many of you may know me. I'm support engineer here in Alfresco Europe. I'm an Alfresco certificate administrator. I also have many years administering big environments of Alfresco, Windows servers, Active Directory. The thing is, normally no one tells you which aspects of your Alfresco environment you need to keep healthy, to keep a solid environment. You need to keep a hard drive, the pillar of the application server, keep a memory, keep it performant, and the database to store everything. You don't have to do it manually, really. There are robots, there are many tools to do it, Nagios, whatever. Find your own way, the one that you feel comfortable, and find a way to control these aspects. About the hard drive speed is really decisive. especially if you use Lucene. Solid-state drives may be recommendable. Also, about the hard drive, you have to make backups of everything. Really, make backups. Do your own backup policy. We do some backups in Alfresco, keeping the copies of the indexes and things like that, but do your own backups. About Lucene. Lucene keeps a set of indexes for each store, but the store is made of segments. These segments has to be in this inverted pyramid structure. If you don't do it this way, Lucene doesn't work properly. Also, keep free space for merges. Keep free, really, do it. Lucene needs a lot of empty space to do the merges. Many open files on the system on some Linux flavors is a problem. About Solar, you can control the number of transactions in your index and control the number of transactions in the database. If this is okay, I'm happy. Read the fucking logs. Read the fucking logs. They'll give you the clue if there is a problem in your system. Also, you can remotely monitor the logs with some tools. I especially recommend the Hub Appender and Chainsaw. It's really nice too. Do your housekeeping. Alfresco does not delete things by itself. You have to delete the things of the content store, don't delete it. Otherwise, you're gonna fill your hard disk. Also, about the database. Some databases are really cool and do the statistical calculation to get the best execution plan, but others don't do it. You have to do your homework, calculate the statistics, and do it yourself. Also the pool, the DB pool of connections. You have to size this accordingly. You don't imagine the amount of users that come, 40 users, the system is not handling it. Okay, by default is 40. Alfresco uses many internally. The number of threads in your application server is really important as well. You have to control it. Share, for example, uses 2 connections per user. You need to size this. To control the memory and the CPU, in enterprise we have the JMX RMI, and really could be very, very helpful. The memory, CPU, all these kinds of performance. You need to control them. There is no right size, there is no bad size. Find your own Java ops settings to control this. Also, generate heap dumps if you suffer an out of memory and analyze this later. It really can help. JSTACks, hot threads. If you're suffering of performance problems, these tools can give you a clue of what's going on, which thread is causing this. And this was supposed to be a surprise, but some guys discovered it in GitHub when I published it last Thursday, and it's no longer a surprise. We wrote a nice add-on to help you do this task that I've related. It's not officially part of the product, it's an add-on. It only works in Tomcat and JDK7, and it comes with a lot of nice features that you can use to control your environment, get the graph of the performance, control the number of sessions, see the system log remotely. How cool is that? How cool is that? And yeah, you can get it on addons.alfresco.com. Test it, give me some feedback. I really would like to see people using it and tell me what you think about it. That's it.
So if you've never done a lightning talk like this, it's hard to appreciate how skilled our speakers are. So that was excellent. I really enjoyed the quality of content presented. So one more round of applause.